Hi, right, yeah. I wonder. This is a video on schizophrenia, basically, and mental illness. Yeah, I'll start off with, I have a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia and OCD. The OCD is mainly kind of something that's only affected me more in the last couple of years, and it's kind of mainly gone away now. But schizophrenia is something I do feel I still suffer from, though I'm taking my medication and things. Anyway, yeah, so basically I wanted to do a video about being open and honest about schizophrenia and my experiences of psychosis and schizophrenia, to hopefully help people, just inform people really about people who are possibly suffering from it, like the first stages, or who are just interested in it, in mental health and things like that. Yeah, it's a massive topic for me. It's something I've dealt with since I was kind of 19 really, and I'm now 31. So it's been a long time I've been dealing with this condition, though I've only had one episode of psychosis that lasted for a year and a half, and then since then I've had a couple of relapses that haven't been so bad, but still been affected and massively influenced by schizophrenia. Yeah, so it's a massive topic for me. I think there's a lot of different views upon it. Understanding different cultural views and shamanic perspectives and spiritual perspectives on schizophrenia has really helped me over the years. But yeah, I just wanted to share some experiences really of it and how I'm dealing with it. I mean, at the moment, I've been quite well for a while. I still suffer massively, quite often, from anxiety, intrusive thoughts. I can get voices if I put under a particular amount of stress, and the side effects of the medication do affect me. Though I would definitely say, like I've been told many times in the past when I've tried to come off my meds, it's a lesser of two evils, really. What's my I have heard of a lot of kind of natural ways to come off medication and heal the brain, heal the mind, but I do think it's a lot more than chemical. But for me at the minute, I prefer to take a couple of tablets a day than suffer with voices and severe psychosis, whatever that would lead to. I mean, my first experience of psychosis when I was 19, had a few kind of experiences before that, which I suppose led up to it partly, but generally the main psychosis I had was complete, utter, desperate suffering, existential terror, I've heard it been termed, and that definitely describes kind of what I went through a lot. It's not kind of like, not even necessarily the fear of your life, but the fear of your kind of your whole essence. Anyway, it can be very different for a lot of people, but I do want to over a series of quite a few videos talk about my personal experiences of schizophrenia, and hopefully educate people, and hopefully help people out there who are suffering from it, or who are suffering from something similar. I think there can be positive aspects to it, the ability for the mind to enter different realms of thought and see things in different ways. And I've heard it said in different books, on videos on YouTube, in different places, on different articles, that in the past the schizophrenic in a culture or society would be taken by a kind of shaman or shay woman, or some sort of wise person, and their kind of abilities to enter altered states of consciousness will be trained. And in this kind of the Western societies, and obviously schizophrenia for most people, and for me as well, it caused me great suffering and utter despair. I mean, I completely lost who I was. My whole personality fragmented and was more or less completely gone for years. My character was kind of just completely infested with symptoms of anxiety and disassociation, paranoia, all these things. And who I was up until that point, over this period of psychosis, was completely non-apparent. I wasn't there anymore. Many friends literally believed I was more or less possessed and things, and that's what I would believe in as well. And it had lots of mystical and spiritual experiences also with schizophrenia and with my spirituality. But I do really want to share my kind of experiences of schizophrenia with you, and try and be open and honest as much as I can about it, really. yeah, so I do choose to take medication, and I do think it's, for me and for many people I know, because I do know many schizophrenics in my local area, and people with bipolar and things, and people who suffer psychosis. I know for them and for me, more or less all of them choose to take their medication because it's a much what do you call a civilized option than kind of suffering in this kind of manic mad world we live in, really. Um, yeah, so I kind of had many experiences of kind of altered states of consciousness in my teens with experimenting with drugs. I didn't have many. A lot of people I know had a lot more than I did, but I was very sensitive, and I guess I had a susceptibility to this condition of schizophrenia. Um, I got massively into fasting and starving myself at the age of 16, and initially I did it to try and lose weight. I was quite chubby, and I kind of got bullied and picked on a lot for that, and it really affected me. But really, I guess what I question now is my sensitivity to those, what people were saying. I was ultra sensitive, and it really affected me. So I started starving myself to lose weight. But after a while, after a couple of weeks and months, I found it had massive spiritual benefits for me, and I started to have a massive interest into spirituality. And whilst fasting and starving myself, I also I used to smoke a lot of cannabis, which I can't do now, and I wouldn't recommend for anyone with a sensitive brain chemistry and sensitive mind. Um, yeah, so I smoked a lot of cannabis back in the day. I and I also experimented with magic mushrooms and ecstasy, speed, a few other things, but I never had it massively. I mean, for where I live, a lot of people, a lot of teenagers do, experiment with drugs, and that's all I was doing really. But I found for me, it had a massive, it enabled me to leave my ego, to leave my quite suffering state of mind, that kind of despairing state of mind, and drugs, certain street drugs, give me the ability to leave those states of consciousness and expand, basically, totally just expand and see things I could never normally have seen. But I definitely, if I could go back to my old self, I definitely would have recommended a more, not to kind of reach those states through drugs, but to do it through various other means, which there are many. So I used to start meditating loads, got into Zen Buddhism and Buddhist practices, Buddhist meditation. I started to read about channeling and things, channeling spirit guides and stuff for the benefit of myself and humanity. I started to really become very altruistic and humanitarian, kind of in my philosophy of, share the earth, give love to each other, and kind of spiritual and religious um, ideals of kind of, things like that. Anyway, so yeah, I suppose, and on that kind of those experiences over the years before my psychosis, I kind of really enabled me to see many things I never would have seen. But yeah, so I meditated and fasted, and a couple of times I kind of fasted for 2 or 3 days and meditated loads, and then took some ecstasy with some friends, and it completely blew my head away. I had very powerful experiences, very powerful mystical and spiritual experiences, but really it was way too much for me at the time. It kind of blew me out of the water, so to speak. And I believe if anyone's on that spiritual path, they need to take things really steady and patiently, and the option to do it through drugs, in my experience, is not always the best option. I think it can unbalance the mind, unbalance the biofield of the human soul. And anyway, so going back to kind of mental illness, I kind of getting into spirit guides, believing in ghosts, nature spirits and everything, which I still do. But things started to change. I started to hear, I mean, the spirit guides and things started saying things to me which weren't of them. It wasn't of good nature, it wasn't of good things. And I just slowly, well, and then it became very rapidly, fell into a psychosis where I was literally in utter despair and in a battle with everything. I felt so ultra sensitive to everything. I mean, the street lights affected me really badly. I would believe those demons on my every trail. I was fighting Satan and demons every day, and there was ghosts and spirits all around me that trying to enter my body. All sorts of things. I love to go through each experience in more detail on another video, on other videos. But Yeah, so basically for about a year and a half, I lived homeless, voluntarily homeless for a while, because of my beliefs, and schizophrenia drove me to that. I made a teepee for myself out in the woods, in the local kind of like nature reserve, and I was living out there because I really believed I needed to be close to nature and away from capitalistic kind of demonic society in a way. So that was a benefit at the time, but while I was there, I slipped further and further into psychosis. Believed I was fighting things, but I was communicating with aliens. I was having God speak in my mind. I was having experiences of, which in many respects, if someone of a stable mind was to experience them, they would be having a spiritual fight. It would be a spiritual battle with mixed in with mystical experiences, and some delusional and confused and misinterpreted, but a lot of them quite mystical experiences. And to be honest, a lot of schizophrenics I've spoken to, and anyone who's experienced psychosis, a lot of what they seem to be going through, to me, is very spiritual and symbolic and shamanic and quite mystical in many of them. And many people I've spoke to report of similar experiences of such, like communicating with aliens, having dealings with gods and angels and demons, fighting things in their mind. And I really feel, and I would love to investigate this more. There's a guy called Rufus May who believes in talking to people's voices and finding meaning and symbolism in their psychosis, which I really relate to, which I found with my dealings with the mental health hospital and system. They really invalidated all my experiences. They really kind of made out that everything I went through was completely insane, it had no validity, it was just gobbledygook jargon, insanity, madness, and who I was, everything in my mind and who I was as a person, I felt kind of therefore it has become defective and inferior and obsolete and nonsensical, which to me and my understanding is, before that and during that parts, is really not right. I believe there is great meaning in mental illness. There is great meaning in psychosis, and whatever we go through, if we truly understand the roots of why it's happened and the roots of what our depression or psychosis is saying and the reasons why they've happened, whether they be biochemical, physiological, but I believe they're always more than that as well. There's always something, even if it's happened very early in childhood, even as a baby, experiences we've had, or situations we've been in, which has caused this imbalance in our brain or has a bad effect. I do believe people physically have a susceptibility to take possibly less stress upon their body and their mind, but that is still an outcome of what has happened to them. And it's a synchronicity of what happens within the body and outside the body, which I really feel. It's, say for example, if you see a beautiful painting, and you feel great from that, that'll literally alter the chemistry in your brain, and therefore, was it the chemicals in your brain that made you find it beautiful, or was it the painting? It happens together, doesn't it? It happens in synchronicity. And I know that's quite a simple idea, but I think that principle applies to many things, which science seems to, well, mainstream science seems to overlook. It kind of puts everything down to its basic chemical aspects, which I think the mind is the experiencer, and it's more of a synchronicity of the two, or of the many dimensional things. But anyway, yeah, so I really felt after my first experience in psychiatric hospital that a lot of who I became as a person was very invalidated. I became very kind of like seen as obsolete and mad and wrong. And since then I've kind of suffered and struggled with schizophrenia a lot. My mother was my carer for a long time. I had some very good friends who stood by me, and I've met some great people in the mental health system locally that kind of we support each other in that. And I've recently been back in contact with some old friends, over the past couple of years, and they've been really, understand me. I'm well enough to have them as friends now. But really, schizophrenia has affected me massively in my adult life, and has been kind of almost like the main kind of contributing factor to the way my life is. Because at the moment I do a lot of voluntary work, but I am supported financially by the government. I'm on sickness benefits, and I feel that when I'm well, if I'm well for a couple of months, I feel almost guilty for having this financial help, and I try and do more. And I volunteer. I've volunteered for thousands upon thousands of hours over the years, and I do my best. I do my damn best to try and contribute what I can. And I feel very guilty that I cannot totally supply myself. Kind of be self-sufficient and be responsible for my own finances and make my own money. Which is why I have the time and motivation, aspirations to share this information on here as well, because I really feel that I want to give something back to society, and I want to share my experiences because I believe it creates a more open, honest and heartfelt society when people are honest about their experiences. It just creates more understanding in the world if people know what people go through, and we'll share our experiences. So yeah, I do feel really bad. I am trying to work towards getting a kind of proper employment now. I worked for a long time in various places, in mental health charities, at mental health groups, in environmental things. I've campaigned in animal welfare and animal rights. I've campaigned for Friends of the Earth and environmental things. I've done a lot of stuff for Time to Change campaign, which is breaking the stigma of mental illness. I've volunteered in all sorts of places. I've been a carer for my mum, part-time sort of thing, for quite a while. And I'm trying to really, because she's suffered an illness now, rheumatoid arthritis and things. Yes, I'm really trying to I'm trying to give back. I'm trying to give what I can, but really, my illness is still there. I'm still taking the medication. I have bad anxiety. I have voices if I get under too much stress. I can be very confused and sedated a lot and very tired from the medication. And then there are times when I'm full of energy and I feel I can do loads. But it's a big kind of catch-21, isn't it? Really, you feel ill, you feel terrible because you're ill, but then you're kind of deserving of what you get financially from the government. But then all of a sudden you're well and you want to do more, but then all of a sudden you're faced with this massive burden, it seems to me, to be a completely independent, self-sufficient adult who's trying to see as who who are trying to be as good as, not necessarily as good, but as functional as everyone else. And it's a difficult situation. Anyway, I'll go more back into the kind of symptoms of schizophrenia. To me, I kind of hearing the voices and things like that. That's been a major impact over the years. I don't have them hardly ever anymore, but only when I'm under quite a lot of stress. And in the past they've literally took over my whole life. I mean, over a period of the end of 2003, 2004, for about 9 months, all I had in my head for the whole time, more or less what took the whole headspace in my head, was just these voices dominated me, persecuted me, put me down constantly. And they really took over me. I had immense stress and horror from what I went through with them, and I was basically suicidal for most time of a year, making all these plans and things. But anyway, yeah, I'll end this video now, but I'll continue on a stream of videos, part 2, 3, 4, 5, and how many more, about my personal experiences of schizophrenia. So I hope that has been a good introduction to you, and I hope you can feel benefited from what I have to say. Okay, thanks. Bye.